It's November, and that means it's MMI season. And these are basically your medical interviews which get you in or out of medical school. And that's pretty frightening because it's arguably the most important interviews you'll have ever done up to this stage. Not ever, because you'll soon have to do your junior doctor interviews, your training interviews, your consultant interview. You'll get used to interviews, but generally, these are probably the first set of interviews you've done at least since maybe 11 plus or 13 plus or 6th form. So you might be a little bit out of touch and you might want some tips on how to do well on them. So you come to the right place. We're going to go through exactly what you need to know, basically what MMIs are and a couple of my tips on how to do well on them. So sounds like a good idea to you? Let's get straight into the video. So firstly, what is an MMI? Well, an MMI are multiple mini interviews, and basically it's a format of an interview that is not where you have a person sitting on a table and you basically talk for like half an hour. It's not that. That is completely different. MMIs are in person, virtual, whatever. This format is still the same. Essentially, there are 8 stations in an interview, so there are 8 separate interviewers, and these are all in one interview, right? So you'll have 8 separate people at different desks, so 8 desks, 8 people, and you basically go around and have a 5-minute conversation with each person at each desk. And the premise is, by the end of about 40 minutes, you'll have had 8 different 5-minute conversations with 8 different people. And each person is going to test you on a different thing. So that could be ethics, it could be your personal statement, it could be a role play scenario. It's basically going to be a vast variety of different things that is basically up to the medical school to choose what they test you on. That's all MMI is. It's nothing too complicated, but it is a very different style of MMI, and it does lend itself different sort of techniques and styles to do well on. So what are some ways you can do well on your MMIs? Well, very easily, the first thing is to practice under timed and real conditions. Because the MMI is such a different style of interview, it's really likely that you're going to be using different skills that you would for a normal half-an-hour interview with one person. You know, think of the normal standard interview that you think of when people talk about getting jobs or people getting, new work. They have normal interviews with one person and they chat for half an hour. The skills you need from MMI are very different, and time management is really one of those things. Because you're limited to 5-minute conversations, it means that your answers have to be not too long, because then you'll get cut off and you might not be able to say everything, but also not too short, because then the examiner's going to be asking you a lot more questions than you want them to. And the only real way of doing well at this is practicing under time conditions. So even if you don't have 8 people with you at all times, if you've got one person who's willing to test you or examine you, ask them to do a 5-minute interview with you on one topic and see whether you can fit in all your answers within that time, or roughly fit in all your answers. And that's a really good way of just testing yourself. There's no point in doing it untimed, because in the interview, you're not going to have 5 minutes for one question. You'll likely have like a minute per question. So it's really important that you get used to this. And also go and do real mock MMIs that your school offer, that a local charity like 6Med or Medify or the Medic Portal, they offer loads of these mock MMI circuits. And go to universities who offer these days. So Imperial College, for example, offer loads and loads and loads of mock MMI circuits and conferences and sort of tutorial days where you can go to the campus, get lectures in the morning, and then have mock MMI in the afternoon. PopMed recently ran one, which is notoriously very good. So I'd really recommend signing up to these, following all the charities and societies and organizations on Instagram to keep up to date with them, or basically just, even if you don't have Instagram, there's no need to have social media, just check their websites regularly, but you'll get plenty of updates. Now I want to say another thing that comes on quite nicely. Do not practice answers in these mocks or whatever you do. I've been saying to do loads of mock MMIs just now, but what I don't want you to do is now go and have like 5 different mock MMIs and practice the exact same answer, because what's going to happen is by the 5th time, the interviewer is going to kind of realize you've practiced this exact same answer, and being robotic or scripted or saying an answer that you've clearly practiced is the worst thing you can do. They want you to really be off the cuff, they want you to talk about things that maybe you've not thought about, and basically they want you to show that you can think on the spot. This doesn't mean you can't practice or prep templates of answers, so basically someone's going to ask you, why did you choose this medical school? There's no reason why you can't think of some reasons that you're going to say, but don't practice the actual answer word for word. Just think of some general points you're going to bring up and get into the habit of being able to express those points in different ways. So in every MMI, make sure you're answering, if the same question comes up several times, answering it in slightly different ways. If you've got a good answer, that's great, don't change it, but just phrase it in different ways. Make sure you're showing that you're thinking on the spot, that you're at least changing the wording of your answers at a bare minimum. Really important that you don't just repeat the same answer. It's the worst thing you can do, to be honest. So make sure you're changing your answers up. Revise the medical school. Really commonly, they'll ask you, why do you want to come to this medical school? And the worst thing is if you just give a general answer like, I like medicine and you guys teach it nicely. The best way to test whether your answer to this question is good is if you said this answer, would it work at different medical universities? So for example, your answer to this question at Imperial College shouldn't really work for King's College. It should be really specific to Imperial, pick out some points that are really good. It doesn't have to necessarily be true, but they just want to see that you've thought about why you want to come to this university and at least show some sort of attraction towards their campus. Because think about it, they'll have like thousands of people applying for medicine. They want to make sure that they're picking people who genuinely want to come to their university. Obviously, they'll know that a lot of people who get places won't end up coming because they'll get their first choice or for other reasons, but they still want to offer people who want to come to that university. So make sure you do your good enough research before the interview and pick out some really vital points that are going to make sure are applicable to you and also to the university. So that way you can actually come across like you genuinely want to go to the uni, and that's really important as well. Reflect on your personal statement is a really important thing because I feel like the personal statement is one of the biggest things that your interviews are going to read before the station. Normally one station is dedicated to the personal statement, so make sure you've read the personal statement and you know everything that's on it. The worst thing is that you've said you volunteered 3 hours a week at a hotel, cleaning up stuff, and then when it comes to interview, you've completely forgotten about it, or you've made it up and you forgot that you made it up on your personal statement. So hopefully you've not made anything up on your personal statement, but if you have fudged something a little bit, or if you've just forgotten about something that you've written on your personal statement, please read it beforehand because you want to come across like you know what you've been talking about. Because let's be honest, if you've written something in your personal statement that you don't even know that well about, why have you written it on your personal statement? And interviews are going to hone in on that. So make sure, even the night before, and actually I'd recommend the night before, read your personal statement, make sure you know everything on it, you're comfortable with everything, explaining everything, reflecting on every experience that you've put on there, talking about every achievement that you've got, because they will pick anything. So please just go through that personal statement and get familiar with it. And finally, nicely moving on to our last thing, read up on the scientific stuff that is relevant to you. Your personal statement, you likely have spoken about some sort of science. And believe me, they will pick up on anything. So even if you literally said, I did some work for Alzheimer's UK, or I did some work for the British Heart Foundation, or I did some work for Duchenne Muscular Dystrophy UK, they will pick up on that charity and ask you, do you know what heart disease is? Do you know what muscular dystrophy is? If you've named anything scientific in that person's statement, any word that is remotely medical or remotely academic, they might pick up on it and quiz you about it. Now, they're not going to expect you to have a university level knowledge, but they'll expect you to know what, for example, the NHS website says. That's a really good thing to go off. So have a look at the NHS website, see what it says about that condition, do some reading about it. You can never know too much, you know, you can never know too little, to be honest. So the more you learn about it, the safer you'll be and the more impressed the interviewer will be. So if you've named anything scientific in that person's statement, please read up on it. Don't get caught out by the interviewer and do some reading on it. If that doesn't sound clear enough to you, you can ask me more questions on it, but it's just something I want to say. Make sure you've read up on anything scientific you've mentioned in that person's statement. And that's generally all of it. I don't want to talk too much and I don't want this video to drag on. There are 5 very basic tips I think you should know before doing your MMI, and hopefully you can use these to enhance your preparation. If you've still got questions, the comment section is always open, my Instagram's always open as well, and yeah, nice to see you all at Imperial as well. It's really cool to meet some of you, so that's always good. So if you do see me in campus, you can come up to me and say hello. I'm more than happy to, you know, wave back at you. And yeah, have a chat. We're almost at 1,000 subscribers as well, so please, if you aren't subscribed, please do have a look and check if you're subscribed, and if not, please do subscribe, because that would be amazing to get there. And yeah, apart from that, I can't think of anything else, so I'll see you all in the next video.